Today is the 28th of August 2017. It's the 75th anniversary of the Battle of Isaravu, which raged from the 26th of August 1942 to the 29th of August 1942. It was battles like this as a historian that I become very interested in Papua New Guinea. So 46 years ago in 1971 at age 21, I took up a position in Papua New Guinea in Port Moresby. I was surrounded by many battlefields, and my weekends were wrapped up in exploring what was around and also on other sides in Papua New Guinea. A mate of mine, Steve Thompson, was a historian too, and his father had served on the Kokoda Track with the famous 39th Battalion. So it was Steve really that got me rolling with the 39th Battalion and what this magnificent militia battalion did. At that time, in that first year I was there, my young brother Mick came up from Victoria. He was a 17-year-old, still at school, but he wanted to spend a bit of time with me, which he did over a period of 2 months. So Mick was involved in what we were doing up there with our military exploration. Then one day Steve Thompson came to me and he said to me, David, he said, would you like to go for a walk up to the Imatara Ridge as to where the Japanese got to on the other side of Iribaya? And I said, yeah, that'd be a good idea, Steve, because I was in my first year there and Steve was always out in his motorbike exploring different places, but he wanted to go for a walk up to Imatara Ridge. And I said, okay. So myself, Steve and my brother, Jerry Powell and Jerry Taylor, we were the 5 that headed off early one morning, and we went to McDonald's Corner, and then we went on to Owa's Corner. Now, there was nothing at Owa's Corner at that time. I mean, they've got the big arches there now, and Kokoda Trail, Kokoda Track. We were always known as Kokoda Trail, and the reason was because Bert Kinzel said it was a mail trail before the Second World War. And that's the way people used to get their mail, or people just getting supplies or whatever. But the Australians changed it to Kokoda Track, and that's fine. But when I lived there, it was always known as the Kokoda Trail. So anyway, we arrived at Owa's Corner early in the morning, and at that time Newberry Village was a fully operational village. It was the biggest village on the Kokoda Track during the war. It was a big staging camp, and when you went down the first ridge over the Goldie River, up the escarpment, here was this terrific big village called Newberry Village, and I'll show you photographs of it later. Anyway, it's not there now, it's gone. Anyway, we were met by the village chief, and we sat there and had a bit of a chat, and we ordered some pineapples for when we came back, because it was going to be up to Imatara Ridge and back again in the day. It's roughly about a 3-hour walk. We were quite, because we've been living there nearly 12 months, we were, you know, we were pretty right with all the conditions. It was still hard going, but anyway, we headed off early in the morning, and away we went. And we got to Imatara Ridge, the base of it, and Steve said, you know, have a look at this. And there was the Golden Staircase. So famous and so iconic that for years as a young guy, I'd seen in books and in newspapers the Golden Stairs, and it wasn't like it is in the book, but I'm talking, it was only 29 years after the Kokoda campaign, so wood was still good then. My brother and I, in discussions, we felt that there was only roughly about 40% of the staircase there. But when I looked at that iconic photograph, this iconic photograph here, and I stepped back to where that photo was taken, it was how it was back in 42. There were steps missing, but it wound its way up there, and it wound its way across to the west. Now, then when it got to the top, it ran into a very interesting formation of rocks, and I'll explain that to you. But anyway, I stood there and looked at it, and I thought, this is quite incredible. Halfway up the actual staircase, and the boys were walking ahead of me, And what was very dominant in the staircase were the upright pegs that actually locked the stairs in place. And I can see why the diggers had a lot of problems with the stairs, because it was collecting water in between the steps, you know, and you could go for a bit of a sixer if you weren't careful. And when you're packing 60 pounds on your pack plus all your other gear, it would have been hard going. So I can understand what they meant. But I could see there'd been a fair bit of foot traffic there, and it must have been, at that time, the main run to Iribaya and the other ridges beyond that for the locals. Halfway up there, in the 3 years I lived in Papua New Guinea, I'd never seen a bird of paradise only on the golden staircase. Now, the amazing part about it, we were halfway up the staircase, and over to our right there, I saw this magnificent blur of gold. And the birds of paradise come in different colours, but this magnificent bird, and it fluttered. And I said to my brother, I reckon that's saluting the diggers that came along here. It was just off, and you know, I never again saw another bird of paradise. They're a very shy bird, they are, and that was it. And I thought, how iconic! Golden stairs, golden bird of paradise. A little bit higher up the track, and as I said, the stairs, apparently there was 2,000 stairs in there, I have no idea. But as I said, they were very sparse when we were there, but they were definitely the golden stairs. As we got to the top of the stairs, we were confronted by this, and only people that have been there on the staircase would know this, and I know there's only very few people that have been there. I was confronted by a massive wall of rock to the left and to the right. Now, the golden staircase is on the right-hand side of Imitar Ridge, or you could say to the east. So it's right to the east. So we climbed up and we got to this big rock formation. I thought, gee, where are we going to go here? We went through this very narrow opening, and I thought, wow. I stood there and I thought, every digger that served on the Kokoda Track walked this track, and they would have gone through that narrow opening of boulders singularly. And I'm thinking of all the great diggers that walked over that top of Imitar Ridge. The actual top of the ridge is only about 15 to 20 metres in width. It's just a narrow grass opening, and the rest, there are boulders, and there's weapon pits. Now, there was 4 battalions on Imitar Ridge, and that was going to be the final stand. You know, if the Japanese got past Imitar, we were in a lot of trouble. And the weapon pits then were quite deep. And I've got photographs, which I'll show you later, of some of my mates standing in weapon pits. Now, as time's gone on, you know, they're filled up with rubbish and so on. But yeah, my brother, he disappeared off to the right there, and he came back with part of a skeleton on like a banana leaf, and I've got it on the photograph there, and it was sort of like looks like a leg bone and some rib. Now, there was no fighting on Imitar Ridge, but Mick said he was scratching around in a weapon pit, and he dug down and he found these bones. Now, someone's been buried there, or part buried there, and we just looked and we put it back and covered it up. But where or who those bones belonged to, I don't know. It wouldn't have been a soldier, because as I said, there was no fighting on Imitar Ridge. It was on the other side of the valley on Iribaya. That's where the fighting was. So anyway, it was an incredible experience, and we walked back to Uberry village, and we had the pineapples waiting for us. We sat in Goldie River there and cut them up with a machete and ate them, and climbed up the other side of the ridge, and we went home. Didn't think a lot more about it after that. So remember, this is 46 years ago. And then in the 1980s and the 1990s, the trekking company started taking people across the Kokoda Track. Now, I know there would have been individuals doing it before that, you know, and to give you a bit of an idea, like in a year, in those early years, in the 60s and the 70s and the 50s, you might get 4 or 5 people go across the Kokoda Track in a group. That's about it, you know, just very small numbers. People just didn't do it. There was nothing organised. You took it on at your own risk if you went across. So that's how it was. And I didn't think any more about it. And then, I mean, it's become so popular to walk the Kokoda Track, and there's 5,000-6,000 people walk it a year now. So you multiply that back, you know, into the 1990s. That's a lot of Australians and their friends that have walked the Kokoda Track, and that's wonderful. I didn't realise at the time that until I started seeing photographs of the top of Imitar Ridge, and a lot of the trekkers were standing on these long, clear areas of Imitar Ridge, and I thought, well, that's not right. That's not Imitar Ridge based on the photographs that I'm looking at, because the golden staircase would take you right to the top through that very narrow opening, and you couldn't stand like this photograph portrays. I then was looking at photographs of the Kokoda Track and how the track had been diverted to the west of Imitar Ridge. And that makes sense, because during the war, where there was terrible fighting, the villagers never went back to that village. It was a no-no. They rebuilt the village up the hill or down the valley, whatever. The same with malaria and all that around Nauru and all those areas there on Brown River. They moved the villages up onto the ridges away from the rivers to get away from all the malaria that their locals were getting. So I thought, well, that makes sense. Okay, they've gone to the west. I know the Golden Staircase and the track went to the east. That's how it goes. Anyway, then I started seeing these photographs appearing in newspapers stating, where was that photograph taken? I thought, well, it's the Golden Staircase on the south side of Imitar Ridge. But people were doubting that, and I thought, well, no, they're wrong. And it was a wartime mystery. They were saying it's not there. And I thought I'd just sit and not do anything for a little while. And then when the 75th anniversary came up and they're still talking about where is this iconic photograph taken, it is definitely taken on the south side of Imitar Ridge. And I have been on that staircase, and there was only the one, and there was nothing on the reverse side going down Imitar Ridge on the front. So, and I've got photographs of the top of the ridge, as I said, I'll show you. So I just felt it was time to solve this mystery, because it really is the place. And Charlie Lynn in 2009, who's a wonderful trekker who takes many teams over there. Charlie always wanted to walk the actual staircase. Well, I know by the time they started trekking, the staircase would have been totally gone, and it was absorbed by the jungle. It's a razorback ridge, not very wide, so I can understand time would just take it. But to me, I feel that those upright pegs would be still in the ground. And I know you can get all this great X-ray gear that you can look at stuff, and you can, like they do, archaeology, they would definitely be able to. I mean, I know that ridge now would be overgrown with trees, and those trees pretty well were like that when I was there too. They were very sparse, the trees, and they were sort of whitey sort of coloured trees. I don't think that's really changed. They might have grown on the track, but you would certainly be able to sort out the actual staircase. And as I say, you would follow that staircase right to the top to what I call that entrance was the gateway to hell for all those diggers. And there's a photograph of me standing there, and I can remember I'm just standing there looking across at Iribaya Ridge thinking, boy, oh boy, you fellas copped it when you went down into that valley, So that's why I felt at the 75th anniversary I had to say something, because that has to be given a location. And I know Charlie Lynn, and you're on the money, Charlie. If you can get in there, and I know Charlie's heading that way now with his trips, and that's great. But the only way really is to get in there and x-ray that area. That ridge, it's a razorback ridge, it's not very hard to find. You get the old army maps, which Charlie has, and he'd get it right. So I just felt today I'd like to solve a wartime mystery of where the actual Golden Stairs were, and where that actual photograph was taken. So this was the Kokoda Trail, as we called it back there. This was on the 27th of November 1971. We shouldn't have called that foxhole, we should have called it a weapon pit. So this is on Imitar Ridge. Now this here is very interesting. This is Uberry Village, which is no longer there. This is the village chief of Uberry Village. That's Jerry Taylor. And that's my young brother Mike there, who was 17. That's me, I was 21. And this here is Jerry Powell. This fella here was an Englishman. So up here on this ridge at the back here, this is where Ower's Corner is. Goldie River's down here, but this is on the way to Imatara Ridge. So, but he was the chief of the village. Now, this is Jerry Powell in a actual weapon pit on Imatara Ridge. So you can see they were quite deep. There was 4 battalions, Australian battalions on Imatara Ridge, and it's a razorback ridge, or saddle, I should say, so that you can imagine the amount of weapon pits were there. This is the small clearing at the top of the Golden Staircase. There's only actually a photograph was taken from one of the boulders I was telling you about. So that's about the width of it. This here is Steve Thompson. His dad was the guy I was telling you about, fought with the 39th Battalion on the Kokoda Track. So it was a special walk for Steve. That's myself, and that's Jerry Taylor. As I said to you, my brother found that little leaf there. You can see there's bones on there. Mick was digging away in a weapon pit, and he unearthed this part skeleton, which we put back there. It wouldn't have been the diggers, anything like that, because they didn't fight there. This, I'll just show you, excuse me for 2 ticks. This is Imatara Ridge, there, right? So this is Ower's Corner. So from there to there, about 3 hours walk, okay? You can see it's a big flat ridge. Now the Golden Staircase was on the east side, which is here. The tracks today go to the west. But if you look in here, you'll never see this anymore. That's Uberry Village. Still a going village. There's nothing there now, it's just jungle. So there it is, the wartime village of Uberry. This is another close-up of Uberry Village, with the photo we've taken there. And this here is Iribaya Ridge, taken from opposite Imatara Ridge to the little narrow gap. That's Iribaya Ridge there, where the Japanese got to, on the top of the ridge there.